Ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, it's time for another round of Mind Your Puckin' Business with your host, Jeffrey Krintzman.
Thank you, sir. Coming to you, as always, from the beautiful studios of Undefeated Media here in Bergen County, New Jersey. This is the Mind Your Puckin' Business podcast, brought to you, of course, by our good friends at the Bamboozle Project, as well as DraftKings. You can check out the Bamboozle Project at thebamboozleproject.com, which is conveniently across your screen. Use the promo code MYPB, save yourself a whopping 25%. And with the dip in the weather here in the Northeast, it's a wonderful time to get your hat situation and get acclimated for the winter. And that would be what I would go on that site and get. Yes.
Do you feel like you're always behind the eight ball when it comes to like the seasons changing and
100%.
stuff? You know what I mean? Like it's middle of winter and then you get your hat or then you get your jacket. It's like, you know what I mean? I feel like that's always made. Like, or like the summer's been in for a month and I get my bathing suit. You know what I mean? We gotta get
You gotta be
ahead of the eight
proactive.
ball, yeah.
And get on the site and get your
hat
MYPB hat now. This is episode 124. That is episode number Ciento Veinte Cuatro on the Spanish dial. Yeah, that was
you practiced that one.
I did it. And that one actually worked really well for some reason. You can send your questions at any time to mypbshow@gmail.com, or you can DM us on the Instagram platform. And that you can send us on Instagram across your screen again at Mind Your Puckin' Business. You can listen to the show in a variety of different ways. If you want to watch the camera feed, you can do that on YouTube, or you can stream us whatever is convenient for you, and you can do that both on Spotify as well as iTunes. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I feel like in the intro today, you were, I don't know, maybe it's the volume in my headphones. We got to talk to our producer here.
Yeah.
I don't know what. I just feel like you were very like amped up for someone who came in the studio before saying you were tired and you didn't get a lot of sleep. You're like,
yes. We're not really getting a lot of sleep. You know, the baby used to wake up 4 times a night. Now she's waking up like twice a night. But at that exact moment, that cold brew coffee kicked in.
And I tell you, I was the recipient.
Now I'm ready to rock.
I was the recipient of that. So speaking of ready to rock, hockey, Ranger training camp opens this week. It has been a very long 4.5 months. I can't recall an off season for the New York Rangers that has seemed to go on as long as this one. I don't know why. There have been longer off seasons. If you think of the years you don't make the playoffs, your season ends really the second week of April. The Rangers lost Game 7 of the Devils on Monday, May 1st. So we're really looking now at 4.5 months, but it seems like it's been forever. So we just need it to be back. The Rangers preseason gets started on Sunday night up in Boston. And look, do preseason hockey games matter? No, they're not worth losing your aggravation and screaming at the TV. However, I will say this, to have hockey back on MSG is a major win for society. I'll even go that far for society.
Absolutely.
So that comes back. So we're going to bring on Jonny Lazarus from the NHL will be with us in a couple minutes, but I want to talk about one thing before Johnny's on. So over the summer, as we all know, the Rangers had a coaching vacancy. We all know my stance on it. Gerard Gallant had to go. I had no problem with that. I was a Gerard Gallant guy, but you know what? He lost the team, couldn't adjust, whatever. We talked about how over and over, because in the summer, you don't have a lot of hockey content, and Chris Drury was being methodical about, interviewing everyone under the sun and not saying anything, and you were wondering who the Ranger coach was going to be. Now, of course, we know now it ends up with Peter Laviolette. We get that. Okay. But one of the names that came up was Mike Babcock. Okay. And I didn't find anyone, including myself, who likes the Rangers that wanted Mike Babcock. I never found it. Like, you could find someone that said Laviolette they liked. Again, I don't, which is fine. We can agree to disagree. But there were people that like Laviolette. There would be some people that said, you know what, John Hines might be okay. Or the guy Spencer Cadbury from Toronto that ended up getting the Capital job. A couple people like them. That's fine. They all have their reasons. I didn't find anyone that liked Mike Babcock. I never found a single soul. And the funny thing about Mike Babcock was, out of all of the coaches out there, well, he would be up there with Laviolette, but out of all the ones that were available, he had the best background, the best resume, right? If you're hiring with a resume. Did you see what happened with Mike Babcock over the weekend?
No, what happened with Mike?
So Mike Babcock gets the job in Columbus.
Okay.
Now, he hired, they hire him.
Mm-hmm.
It came out last week on another podcast, Spit and Chicklets, which is an excellent hockey podcast. I strongly recommend them. That it came out that in his first, wasn't even real practice because training camp isn't open. He's around the practice facility.
Yeah.
He must have asked his players to see their iPhones. Okay. So he then took player whoever, X's iPhone, and AirPlay or AirDrop? And so that everyone could see the pictures and putting all the stuff from their phones up on the phone.
And there was,
I don't know
what pics.
That I don't know.
Blank pics.
That I don't know. And I haven't heard that aspect of the story.
Okay.
But whatever it was, wasn't good. But what was even worse was that it wasn't well received from the team because he was let go over the weekend. So here is a guy who
was in the building for like 2 days.
They didn't even open training camp, Doug. It didn't even start. He got hired he literally was hired 2.5 months ago?
Yeah.
In the off season. So now I'm sure what he did, he took his family and he's got a wife and kids and he moved to Columbus, Ohio, right?
Nice
buys a house.
Yeah.
I'm sure not a little house with the deal he got. And he was a $10 million a year coach, if I remember correctly back in the day.
He got a house.
Yeah. So he moves his family to Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah.
He's now getting acclimated to the team, learning the personnel, learning the media out there, learning on who's on his roster, who's in his farm system, all of that, right? Yeah. And what happens? He's fired, but they haven't even started.
We got to find out what was on this iPhone. And what was the reasoning for putting this player's iPhone up? Like, was it like, supposedly, here's the playbook. Hey, Timmy, put the playbook up.
No. And whatever the connotation was not in a positive sense. And it was not received well by the players. And this guy who, as Chris just wrote in, thank you, Chris, and he's right, we can put his comment up, that Babcock had many red flags. And that's exactly probably why all Ranger fans were like, you know what? I ain't touching this guy. I don't want to go near him. So if you think Mike Babcock had red flags going into the summer, what does he have today, knowing that he has gotten fired before it even began?
Yeah.
That is amazing.
What was the reason? I want to know what the reason was.
I don't know. I don't know what was on the Blue Jackets phones. I don't. And again, I am not the biggest Peter Laviolette fan, but when you see what happened in Columbus, it makes you feel a little bit better with the choice. And again, there's nobody I know that wanted Mike Babcock to coach the Rangers. But when you see this stuff, man, you're just like, how is this even possible? Training camp didn't even open yet. I mean, it's remarkable. Well, Chris is writing in, and maybe this is true that he did this airdrop thing by wanting to learn about the players. Maybe that's true, but I would think there's other ways to do it in a less humiliating fashion that you do not lose the locker room.
What did you do last week? Yeah. Let's see your photos.
Yeah, I don't know. All right, so let's bring in Jonny Lazarus is here. We're going to bring in Johnny, and if Johnny is here,
I want to know if Johnny knows what's on the iPhone.
We can ask Johnny. Johnny would have a better idea of knowing than I would know for sure. We're going to bring Johnny on, and if Johnny is here, that means hockey's got to be around the corner because we don't really see Johnny too much in the summertime, but it's kind of like we have our little off season together, but we'll bring in Johnny. Why don't we bring him in? How are you?
What's up, fellas? Long time no talk. Sorry, I'm coming up with a bit of a cold, so I apologize for the sniffles and whatnot ahead of time.
No problem. That is Jonny Lazarus with the NHL, the Hockey News, and Blue Crew Pod, which is also another very good Ranger podcast while we're on the discussion of other podcasts.
Yeah, buddy.
Before we get into the Rangers, my co-host wants to know, do you know anything about what was on these phones with Mike Babcock in Columbus?
I don't know anything about what was on the phones, but I did hear this story a couple of days prior to Chicklets talking about it. And I've had experiences not with Babcock firsthand, but my coach in college, Craig Carville, coached with Babcock in Anaheim. He was his assistant. So, Carv always kind of talked about Babcock in the locker room and video sessions. And, obviously, Babcock was someone that he looked up to as a coach, and, Carv, kind of coached in a similar style, didn't do the similar stuff that Babcock has done to players. But, I guess when I heard this story, I thought it was weird. I found it a little bit surprising. But I know a lot of coaches are different in their tactics of getting through to players. So I wasn't sure how bad it really was. I didn't know what was on the phones or what necessarily went down. And obviously as the story has come out and progressed, it just seems weirder and weirder and, more similar to what Babcock's reputation is. But it's an interesting world, right? Because I think a lot of these old school coaches now, want to stay relevant, want to feel younger, and be able to relate to the younger players. And maybe this was his way of trying to do that. But also, like, he does play a lot of mind games and is known for playing a lot of mind games. So, like, I really want to hear from him firsthand and, like, hear what he has to say. And I don't know if he'll ever get that chance.
Yeah.
But
I don't think he probably
and
will.
I don't know if he deserves that chance too.
Yeah.
But I just know, like, I was actually listening to Spin Chicklets today's episode before I hopped on, and Witt said that he got a text from a player that I don't want to botch what the quote was, but it was like, coaches shouldn't care what players are doing off the ice. Their job is to get a group to believe that they can accomplish something greater than themselves on the ice. Whatever players do off the ice shouldn't matter, doesn't matter. They're their own individual people. And I couldn't agree with that sentiment more. I think sometimes coaches try to, be a little bit too much buddy with their players, whether that's college, whether that's youth hockey, whether it's pros. And there should be I'm a coach, you're a player. That's the relationship, and it shouldn't be forced to be buddy.
Okay. Yep. We shall see if he gets that opportunity. All right. Let's shift to the east of Columbus, to the New York metropolitan area, because we have you here. As we approach the season, it seems to me now, this has got to be the most popular topic that I've talked about for the last 4.5 months. I'm tired of talking about it, but I'm going to talk about it again because you're here. We have talked more about Lafreniere and Kakko than any other player on the Rangers. It isn't even close. Anyone that DMs us with questions, comments on our stuff, it's all about Laf and Kakko. I feel that for both of these guys, there is an enormous amount of pressure for them to develop more this year and produce more than they have. Would you agree with that?
I memean, that's the obvious yes, right? Like, how could that be a no? But then again, it's like a new coaching staff, a lot of changes are made, a lot of turnover. And, I feel like we said this last year too, but then obviously the deadline moves happen and, it pushes them back a little bit more. But if the Rangers don't bring in Kane and Tarasenko at the deadline, like, what are we saying about Kakko and Lafreniere this summer? Because Kakko had a very strong year. I thought Lafreniere, was incredibly inconsistent last season. There were spurts where he looked great, and there were games where he looked invisible. Kakko, I thought, was a little bit different, where, even if he wasn't producing points, he was still very noticeable in almost every shift he was out there, whether he was creating plays below the offensive goal line or, honestly, with his defensive play. I thought he was pretty impressive last year in the D zone. But this year, production-wise, yes, they have to produce points. But also, I think there's a huge, a huge preparation that needs to be made for the playoffs, because Kakko, I believe, put up 2 points in the postseason last year in the 7 games. Lafreniere didn't have any. So as much as production matters, getting them to get comfortable playing playoff hockey, I think, matters a little bit more, if that makes sense.
Okay. So Laviolette, what he said, and I would think, now we're not in the room with Chris Drury when he's interviewing coaches, and he is very silent. That's the way he is. But I would have thought that one of the things he asked his candidates as a prerequisite was, if you're going to take this job, you've got to play these kids more. And it sounds like Laviolette has said already that Lafreniere and Kakko are going to get more ice time, top 6 minutes, and more power play time. So if that is true, that goes in line exactly with what you said, that's going to hopefully give them the opportunity to therefore make that an obvious answer that they need to produce more. Blake Wheeler, we posted something yesterday. I don't know if you saw it. It was a little bit of a concern from his past in Winnipeg, where he stripped the captaincy. Dan Rosen from the NHL was on with us a couple weeks ago and agreed that, look, it's something that's got to be looked at. I mean, I don't know what kind of guy he is off the ice or in the locker room, but at the term that Chris Drury signed him to, with the years and the money, it's kind of a no-brainer to me. Do you think Blake Wheeler at the end of the year ends up being a good signing for this team?
Yeah, I mean, listen, they paid him $800K and a couple bonuses. Like, it's not like it's, incredible money that they spent on this guy. I think if anything, most people would say that he was like the steal of the offseason, right? This is a guy who's put up back-to-back 90-point seasons in his NHL career. So, he's produced before, he's led before, and obviously, being stripped of the captaincy in Winnipeg is, a little bit of a flaw and maybe a hiccup in what could be his character, but I've never met the guy, so I'm not going to speak on his character. And I know that Winnipeg was an absolute mess of an organization for the past couple of years. So who's to say it's really his fault? Like, you have a coach basically rip the entire team at the end of the season last year. You had another coach resign the year before because he said he wasn't the right voice in the locker room. Like Winnipeg hasn't really been, a top organization in the NHL the past couple seasons. So I'm not going to judge Blake Wheeler's character off of that. If Wheeler was stripped of the captaincy for like, an original six franchise that has an incredible reputation, I'd look a little bit more into it. But knowing what was going on in Winnipeg, I'm not going to judge it too hard. As far as Blake Wheeler at the end of this season, it depends where they use him, right? Like I predicted Blake Wheeler is going to have 63 points this season. I think he'll potentially play in that fifth spot on the first power play unit, depending on if they want to throw Kakko in there or keep Trocheck in there. Trocheck obviously had a lot of time on that unit last year, but Wheeler's a guy that's, a big physical body in front of the net, can bury home rebounds just like Kreider does, essentially. But Kreider's not more of a rebound guy. He's probably more of a deflection guy. Wheeler can be a little bit more physical, and I know the Rangers lacked physicality last year. Does Wheeler make this team faster? No. Does he make them a little bit scarier? Yes, in my opinion. And plus, Wheeler's a guy who is 37 years old. He's been around the NHL for a long time. I think he's a guy that can communicate with Peter Laviolette, and he could be somewhat of a barrier between the younger guys and Laviolette too, right? Like if, let's say Laviolette gets hard on Kakko and Hito and Lafreniere, Wheeler can be that guy that pulls them over and talks to them a little bit, makes them feel a little bit more comfortable, after getting a lashing from the head coach. Like it's going to happen at some point, right? So I think Wheeler does a little bit more than just on ice. He'll be, that voice of reason, just like Jonathan Quick could be for Igor Shesterkin. And I know people are saying that Quick might be a bad signing, but anytime you bring in a 3-time Stanley Cup champion, I know, maybe you can say the Vegas Stanley Cup is whatever, but he was still on that team when they won the Stanley Cup. So having a guy like that in Igor's ear can only be positive, in my opinion, just like Blake Wheeler on this team.
I agree with you completely on Jonathan Quick. Matter of fact, we posted something about it, trying to shut up the Quick haters because I was tired of hearing about it.
I don't get it. Yeah.
I don't get it either. Even if you want to take the Vegas Stanley Cup away from him, which I guess maybe you could argue it, he still won 2 in LA, and we Ranger fans know really well the last one he won in 2014. All right. Lack of physicality. Let me ask you a question because you are a Hockey East guy from UMass. I think that one of the more underrated signings this team made that Ranger fans may love this guy is Nick Bonino. He went to BU, so I knew him from there. But I think he's the type of player that maybe this team lacks. Do you think Bonino could fit this team more than people think? Or you think he's just a run-of-the-mill, let's see how he is, free agent signing?
Well, again, it's like another, I don't want to say Tyler Mott, but it's just a guy who, does the things that aren't necessarily as sexy, but Bonino's won cups. Like, is Bonino going to stand out every single shift? Probably not. But is he going to, you're going to look at stats and be like, wow, Bonino actually had a huge impact on this game quietly. I think that's going to be something that Bonino brings to this team that, people might not love right away, but they'll learn to appreciate as the year goes on. And Ranger fans appreciate that like blue collar kind of play and that Bonino brings. So, I won't be shocked if Bonino puts up like 7 to 10 goals this year too. He's a guy that can finish. He's shown it previously in his career that he can score goals. And do I think that he's going to be like the biggest difference maker? No, but he's a guy I think that all 32 teams in the NHL would want, a veteran guy that, like I said, like he'll win faceoffs. He might be able to score some goals. He'll block shots. He'll potentially kill penalties. And I'm sure he's going to be a positive voice in the locker room as well. He's just a guy I feel like that's very easily coachable. And, for most NHL teams, coaches, players, organizational management, whatever you want to say, I feel like he's just a good guy to have around the organization. Just for everything I've heard. I've never met him. I know people that do know him personally, and I've only heard good things. So I'm excited to see what Bonino brings.
Cool. All right. So this division, I look at the Metro division as kind of tier 1 and tier 1A. I have in tier 1, I probably would put the Devils and the Hurricanes, and I would put the Rangers in 1A, like they could be in tier 1, but maybe they're the bottom of tier 1. When I do that, it's hard for me to see the Rangers not being either in the 2 or 3 seed for the Metro when the playoffs start in April. That would be my guess, right? Maybe they landed to 2, maybe they landed to 3, which would then put you in a situation where you're either playing the Devils in the first round again, or you're playing the Hurricanes. Is there an argument that the Rangers can win the Metro, or would you agree with me that they're probably going to be in that 2 or 3 slot?
I think they will be in the 2 or 3 slot, but there are moments where I think they could drop to 4, possibly even 5, depending. But it really depends on how Pittsburgh performs. The Penguins are a team that I'll never count out. I actually predicted the Penguins to win the Metro last year. Obviously, injuries kind of held them back a little bit, but, a healthy Penguins team is definitely scary. And let me tell you, Sidney Crosby wants to be in the playoffs. So, this team, I think, is a team that shouldn't be overlooked. And the Penguins can easily finish in that 2 spot also. The Devils, I think, could even drop to 4. Like, the thing about the Devils to me this year is that, and I've made this comparison and I want to be careful how I say it. I think the Devils are set up better than the Rangers were last year going into the season. But I think the hype might be a little bit of the same where they're a little bit overhyped. Like the Rangers didn't make the playoffs for a couple seasons. They go on this crazy conference final run, and all of a sudden they're an elite Stanley Cup contender. The Devils missed the playoffs for a couple seasons. They win 1 game in the second round. Sure, they made some great off-season moves, but now all of a sudden they're, again, an elite Stanley Cup contender. I mean, I feel like all the teams that we've talked about that won the Stanley Cup that were elite cup contenders were at least knocking on that door for a couple of years prior. Like the Rangers and Devils were not knocking on the door. They were just kind of figuring it out, coming out of rebuilds and, had a good run. So now it's like, all right, this window is just now opening for the Rangers and Devils, whereas the teams that have won the cup have been, competing for the cup probably 3-4 years prior to that. So just the Devils' pressure this year, I think, could get to them in the locker room. And I'm not, so confident in saying the Devils will win the division. I still think the division is the Hurricanes. I think they're the team to beat. They're probably going to be number 1 again. And then 2, 3, 4, I think could easily be Rangers, Devils, Penguins in any order. And then the Islanders could be that team that sneak in also. But I just feel like, that's all Sorokin. I'm not confident the Islanders will get to 2 or 3. But, 2, 3, 4 to me is up to grabs. And I think the Hurricanes are a lock for number 1.
So I agree with you completely with your reasoning too on the Devils, right? Like they deserve the hype. I get it. But now as Dan Rosen had a great point. Devils are not going to see other teams' backup goalies anymore.
No,
they're going to be ready for them. And so they're not going to have that. And the other thing that concerns me if I'm a Devil fan in terms of winning the cup is the goaltending issue hasn't been Kira Schmidt is not a Stanley Cup goaltender, and Babcock showed you in the playoffs he kind of melted down. I mean, maybe he can get beyond it, but they didn't do anything to address that. So I would be concerned with that. And I agree with you on Pittsburgh, right? As long as if Crosby's healthy and Gensel and all those guys and Carlson and Letang and Malkin, I wouldn't want to be playing a team like that that's healthy.
And they added Riley Smith too. Like they've really rounded out their forward group. Like they're a deep team, Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and I still think Mike Sullivan is a great coach, even though for some reason there were these rumors he was going to be ousted there. But let me pull up Chris's comment on the Devils who just wrote in, and it's a good one, and that is a goaltending will Doug, can we put up that comment right there? The last one? Yeah, you got it. There we go. Goaltending, 2 rookie demon, and the loss of Graves will hurt. Yeah, Ryan Graves will hurt that team.
Severson too.
Severson. That's right. Severson's gone. So yeah, I could see the Devils dropping off a little bit as well for sure. All right, last year, and I gotta say I was impressed when you did this, Johnny. I'm gonna go back. You were with us like a year ago, one of your spots, and you and I were talking about trying to predict the season, and I had to take that the Rangers were going to regress a little bit. And everyone was like, no, they just went to the Eastern Conference Finals. They were up 2-0 on Tampa. They're right on the doorstep. And I said, no, hold on, we're going to regress. And you agreed with me, and we were both right. They regressed a little bit. Do you think, and I'm assuming the answer is yes from what you just said in your last answer, that we may see them regress even a little bit more this year with the regular season?
No, I actually think the opposite. I think now that the pressure is a little bit off of them, they'll flourish in a sense. But to that same point, this is a very, very strong division. I think what we'll notice this year with the Rangers, which lacked under Gerard Gallant, was consistency. And that, I think, is Laviolette's MO, is like getting this team to play the exact same way for 82 games in the regular season. And Laviolette will not take any BS, and he coaches his teams to a certain standard that I feel like Gallant didn't. So I think that's why the Rangers might have a little bit better of a regular season this year because, there's not going to be any off nights, right? Like you're not going to have any fluky 5-1 losses on home ice to Columbus, or at least you shouldn't. And I think that's going to be a huge difference maker is that whether the Rangers have energy or don't, Laviolette's going to get them to play a certain way. Where last year, Gallant was very, outspoken about not going in the locker room and firing up the guys like they're professional athletes. They should be able to do it themselves. And I think, the coaching staff is going to have a big impact on this group. So when you take the pressure away from the team too, like no one's really talking about the Rangers this year to be a cup contender. I think there's a lot of question marks about Lafreniere and Kakko, which, they probably have the most pressure out of anyone. And you can argue that Panarin has a lot of pressure too, but like he shouldn't. I think the Panarin argument is one of the dumbest things amongst like Rangers fans or media or whatever, because this guy has, performed in the regular season almost better than anyone in the NHL over the last 4 years. He's going to perform again. And the playoff thing, we'll talk about that when that gets here. We shouldn't be talking about Panarin's playoff performance in September. It's
Absolutely correct.
It's just so not needed right now. Let the guy gain his confidence throughout the regular season. Let Laviolette somewhat build that confidence for the playoffs, and then we'll talk about it.
And you can't, and people, when they make that argument, and you're right, it's stupid. You can't just get rid of them and replace 92 points in regular season. That's a lot of points you got to replace. Those 92 points help get you into the playoffs.
Exactly. Right, well, people say like the regular season doesn't matter. It matters a lot.
It matters.
Yeah. If Panarin's not there, guess who's not making the playoffs?
Yeah, exactly. People don't realize that it's like cause and effect, right? Yeah. The cause of you having a good 92-point regular season is the effect is you get the team in the playoffs. Now, sure, he should be producing more in the playoffs, of course, but you're not even going to have the opportunity to produce there if you don't have his 92 regular season points. All right, last question for you before we let you go. Lafreniere, you've played hockey, so we can have beat writers on and I can ask them questions, but you really know the game, putting the skates on and understanding it. Is Alexis Lafreniere, from what you've seen, does he have the talent to be a star in the league, or should we just maybe accept that he just doesn't have the skill set to do that? What do you think?
I think he 100% has the talent to be a star in the league. I think for him, and I'll take you through my mind as a player. Obviously, I can't speak on being the first overall pick in the NHL, but like I know, I've been a skilled player on teams. And sometimes when I'm not put in that role, my mind drifts a bit because a coach sees me a certain way, and I know that I can't change that coach's mind no matter what I do. And I think Lafreniere, basically being a top 6 skill guy his entire career, playing a third line role, knowing that no matter how good he plays, he probably won't advance in the lineup, it messes with your brain a little bit. So, I'm not saying that's how he thought, but you could see there were nights where he was playing on the third line and just didn't seem engaged last season. The year before, I think there were more spurts. Like, he was throwing the body. He was, not afraid to drop the gloves. He fought Steven Stamkos in the playoffs. Like, he was just a little bit more engaged. And then the more his role turned into a third line role, he seemed just a little bit disappointed and maybe just understood where he stood in the lineup. So now that he has a fresh start and maybe more of a chip on his shoulder and more to prove, because I don't think he's had a lot to prove in previous years, I'm curious to see how this kid comes out of the gate because, Lafreniere, I think when he's at his best, like he's I don't want to say he's as good as anyone, but his ceiling is definitely as good as anyone's. I mean, we've seen
it.
Right? Like we've seen what this kid can do in the way that he moves with the puck, sees the ice. I'd like to see his shot get a little bit better and maybe him think a little bit more shoot first, but his puck handling is, up there with anyone. And we'll see that between the legs goal a million more times on Twitter. But, I think he's shown that he has the skill. It's just about the consistency and then mixing in the grit and the hunger. I think that's what he's kind of been lacking.
Well, let's hope that that's what shows up this year and we can justify that for sure. Mm-hmm. That is Jonny Lazarus. Thank you, my man. We'll have you back many times, I'm sure, starting now. This is kind of like the Jonny Lazarus season. So keep up the good work. Hopefully we'll see you at some games too at the Garden.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. And my Tuesdays should be available, so I'll be happy to hop on whenever.
You got it. Well, you'll be hearing from us then. Thanks, Johnny. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Johnny.
So it's good. It's actually good to start not just talking about hockey, but talking about hockey knowing that it's like around the corner as opposed to like, the off season is a marathon, not a sprint. Mm-hmm. It feels like it's a really long marathon. Like it's not 26.2 miles. This has been a really long marathon, but it's good that we're getting it back.
Yeah. I mean, and you're lucky that you get to withstand some of this time with some football.
We do. And we'll get to football in a minute, but as a quick reminder, very good, Doug. Football is back in full swing with another week of epic games, and who's got you covered on the action for every single one of them. DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. New customers can bet $5 on football and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Nobody is missing out on the action this season, not even my man Kurt from New Jersey. All DraftKings customers can take advantage of 2 new offers every game day this September. Get in on the NFL Week 3 action with DraftKings Sportsbook. Download the app now and use code THPN to sign up. New customers can bet just $5 and take home $200 instantly in bonus bets, only on DraftKings Sportsbook with the promo code THPN. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, you can call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. Text HOPE-NY. That's 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problems gambling. Call 888-789-777 or visit ccg.org.
Very nice.
Speaking of football,
Yeah.
we had week 1 as awful of a picks week as you could have, right?
Just warming up.
0 for 5. And somehow, by the gods of a backdoor cover, we went 5 for 5. So we run 2 extremes. We thank you in the corner there. we lost you everything you had.
Yeah.
And then we won it back by winning on everything.
You got to play every week.
You got to play every week.
Yeah.
You play every week. Right now, we're even.
Yeah.
You've had entertainment.
Yeah.
You've had a great story because if you bet this Rams a game the other day with the 49ers, the backdoor cover, you're like celebrating because you won money there that you should not have won. You have you should be taking that money and donating it is what you should be doing. So we had a very good week. As a recap, we had the Chiefs -2.5 at the Jaguars, which we hit that. Mm-hmm. The Falcons +1 at home versus the Packers, we hit. I told you the Texans were terrible. The Colts -1 wasn't even close. That was an easy one. The Rams +8 at home versus the 49ers. Backdoor cover, baby. We'll take it. And the Steelers +2 at home. Last night, they won the game outright. Do you like this new thing with the 2 games on Monday night versus one? I don't like it at all.
No, if you're going to do 2 games, they need to be at 2 different times.
Yeah.
So you can do like a 7:00 game and a 10:00 game or something.
Yeah, I don't. Here's the other thing for me, and this look, the NFL wouldn't want to hear this as the reason. They're not going to care. I don't like I like Monday. I want fantasy to be over. I don't like having to wait for Monday night, and now you're adding a whole 2 more rosters that are involved. And usually the Monday night game are not crap teams. Like you're not going to get Arizona. Yeah. I'm sorry about that. I didn't mean that as a negative thing.
Oh, wow.
I didn't even mean to go there. But you're not going to get crap teams, so you're likely to have guys on your that play in that Monday night game that have fantasy implications. Yeah. I much prefer the one.
It doesn't bother me that there's 2 games that day. It bothers me that they're at the same time.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's cool to have more football. Great. Also, maybe it's me. Maybe I can't figure it out. But like, for example, Giants and Jets played at 4, and I wanted to watch the Chiefs game, Chiefs and Jaguars, but I couldn't watch it unless I was watching little pieces of it in Red Zone. I got the NFL app. I paid for the premium membership. I like signed up for everything that day, and I could not get the Chiefs Jaguars game. So like I was stuck. I had what was it? Texans. It was something. It was like Texans here. So on channel 5 or channel 2, I got Texans. And then I had everything else in the Red Zone. NFL Network doesn't play a game, I don't believe. So like I was stuck with that one game, and no matter what I clicked and no matter what I signed up for, I couldn't like choose the game I wanted to watch. Am I doing something wrong?
No. And the other thing that's different now, this never used to happen, that both the Jets and the Giants played at 4:00 this past weekend. It didn't even matter if the teams were terrible. One would be 1, one would be 4. It never used to be like this. There were, for years, they would always be on opposite times. If one was at 1:00, the other team was either at 4 or at 8:00 at night in the night game. They never used to play on the same time. Yeah. It's just odd. Like it, and you could have made, so like if you were the schedulers here this week, the Giant game had to have been a 4:00. Arizona can't do a 1:00 home game on the East Coast, right? Because of the time change. But that Jet Cowboy game, that would have been a better Monday night game than like the Saints and the Panthers. Yeah. I don't know. Sometimes
especially when you're scheduling it thinking Aaron Rodgers is going to play.
Right. Right. It even should have had more hype.
Yeah.
Right. You put
Exactly.
although I guess the argument would have been the Jets were Monday night the week before for week 1, but
Oh well.
yeah, but I don't know. I just like, and if you're a bar, right, you must hate that because if
yeah.
you're a bar, you want them at separate times because it's more hours. You have
more
Jet
room
Giants
for Giants
right.
play people, more room for Jet.
You have Giants people at 1 o'clock getting
Yeah,
drinks
all day.
and food, and then another round coming at 4, rather than condensing it all into one. I don't know.
Yeah,
but we move on to week 3.
But I'm not doing something wrong, right?
No.
Like I got the NFL app premium membership, and like I can listen to it on the radio. There's like, but like because of where I live in my cable, whatever, it doesn't let me watch any game I want. I can listen to the live broadcast. Can't watch.
I must have been like 20 years old, so I'm dating myself, obviously. And we had DirecTV. We'd gotten DirecTV, and one of the things that was like, I don't remember if it was an optional add-on package or it maybe even came with it at the time, was that you could watch any NFL game, and that was like the coolest thing. But that was even before like fantasy was a huge thing. And before Red Zone Channel, but you would sit there and you would flip through like, okay, I want to go turn on the Patriots versus the Colts because the Jet game is on a commercial, and you would do that. That doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah. Is it a cable thing? Do I need to sign up for more cable channels? Like I just don't get it.
The wrong guy.
I don't get it.
I don't know. I'm running around.
Let me know in the comments, people.
I'm running around so many places on Sunday that I never even have the opportunity to approach that. All right, so here are our week 3 picks for Mind Your Pucking Business, coming off of our perfect 5 for 5 week in week 2.
Yeah,
I like the Commanders +7 at home versus the Bills. I don't know that I'm buying the Commanders yet, but I'm buying the fact that that's a lot of points at home for a 2-0 team, and I have a coverage by a touchdown. Give me the Commanders +7 at home versus Buffalo. I'm taking the Broncos +6.5 at the Dolphins. The Sean Payton era for Denver could not have gotten off to a worse start, and the Dolphins are on fire. However, Waddle may be out, and I've got a feeling that Sean Payton has some way to keep this a close game, and +6.5 is a lot. Give me the Broncos +6.5. I'm doing it, Dougie. I don't want to do it, but I'm going to do it. It popped out in my eyes. I like the Jets +3 at home versus the Patriots. The Patriots are 0-2. The Patriots stink. The Jets, I understand that they don't have Rodgers and all that, and they never beat the Patriots. That's 100% correct. But a field goal at home and the Patriots stink. Give me the Jets +3 at home versus the Patriots. Give me the Vikings +1 at home versus the Chargers. The Vikings 0-2, another terrible start. You've got to win. Now you've got the situation. You've got a pick 'em game versus Chargers that Charger games are always close, always. So now I've got a Vikings 0-2 team that needs to win, and they're home, and I'm only giving them away 1 point. Give me the Vikings +1 at home versus the Chargers. Lastly, Packers -2 at home versus the Saints. I'm not buying the 2-0 Saints at all. This is the Packers home opener. It's basically, again, another pick'em -2. The Packers are a better team. Hopefully they'll get Aaron Jones back, who's been hurt. Give me the Packers -2 at home versus the Saints. So to recap, I like the Commanders +7 at home versus Buffalo. The Broncos +6.5 at the Dolphins. The Jets +3 at home versus the Patriots. The Vikings +1 at home versus the Chargers. And lastly, up at Lambeau Field for the Green Bay home opener, I like the Packers -2 at home versus the New Orleans Saints.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I like it.
We'll take the other local team because it's not one of the 5. The Giants have
the extra bet. We don't get graded for this bet.
The Giants must be getting 1,000 points right now because Saquon's hurt too.
Yes.
So right now the spread is updated betting line. Let's see. -9.5. No, 10.5. Went up. 10.5 to the 49ers on Thursday night. What do you like?
10.5 to Giants.
Well,
Giants
right. Yes. I meant the spread's in favor. Yes. Got it.
Yeah.
So the Giants are +10.5.
+10.5.
What do you think?
I'm taking Giants, baby.
I don't even have to ask you. Yeah, I really don't.
No, but I'll bear with me. Halftime of last week, who they play again?
Arizona.
Yeah. Halftime last week, I gave up. I'm not gonna lie. There was a moment of doubt where I completely was like, "Oh my god, like this season's over." Then they came back and whatever. Now there is some speculation that the offensive coordinator was calling the plays for the last 6 quarters, and then Dable had enough. And at halftime of the second game, he started calling the plays. He didn't have a play calling sheet on the first game. He didn't have a play calling sheet in the first half of the second game. And then all of a sudden, in the second half, he's got a sheet. He's covering his mouth. He's calling plays. They're looking like last year. So there's some speculation that Daboll's not too happy with his offensive coordinator. But yes, there was some doubt at the halftime. Doubt is gone. We're back in the game.
We shall see.
We shall see.
All right. So I'm going to go. I don't think this game is close. So I'm going to take. It's a lot of points though. You know what? I'm going to take the Giants I'm going to take the points.
Okay.
10.5 is a lot.
Yeah.
Right. But I'm going to just also say that I don't think there's any chance in the world they'll win, and that could easily lose.
Right.
But 10.5 is a lot,
Okay.
I guess. All right. So before we go,
before we go, there's a lot of rumors
Mhm.
that the Jets are trying to go after Kirk Cousins. What are your thoughts on that?
Paul Farrington mentioned it last week, so we give credit to Paul Farrington for mentioning it first. I would like it. However, from everything, I've also read a lot of things that say the Jets are staying with Zach Wilson this year. The thing with Kirk Cousins is, you can get him and he can help your 2023 season.
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing next year when Rodgers rehabs?
True.
You're kind of in a bind. And I know you're playing for now. I get it, but
and then what do you have to give up for that too?
Right. That's the other thing.
You're
giving
up anything. Yeah.
You're giving up, and right now the rent and your schedule right now is brutal. If I'm the Jets, I almost try and get through the next month or so with Zach Wilson, see if I could tread water, and then as the schedule then gets easier in the second half, I then reevaluate doing something like that. But I wouldn't be doing it now.
Yeah, I mean he's coming back for the playoffs.
Yeah, he thinks that. Yeah, sure. Aaron Rodgers thinks a lot of things that you shouldn't think about. All right, before we go, a little bit of a housekeeping note here at MYPB. We are losing our executive producer, Pat, who's going on to greener pastures. So,
I wouldn't say greener.
Well, greener. Well, it is. He is moving to the Philadelphia area, and the Eagles are green. So I could, I guess, play on words there. So we want to wish Pat really, well, and we thank him for his time here on MYPB. We hope he'll stream it down there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, if you like the social media stuff that we do on Instagram in particular, a large part of that is Pat. So we thank Pat, who's sitting in the corner. Right, Pat? Do you want to come on, Pat? Pat will come on.
Pat wants to wave to the camera.
Pat will come on for his moment of fame. So that is executive producer Pat, who usually sits in the corner. And Pat is in for an interesting chapter in his life because Pat is a huge Giants fan, and he's moving to probably the worst place you could be right now in Philadelphia.
The worst place in the
where
planet.
there are rivals. It could be minus the cheesesteaks and the roast pork. And I can't stand their hockey team either. But we wish you well, Pat, and I'm sure other shows here that you work on at MYPB will miss you equally as well. So, thank you, Pat, for your time.
Thank you, everybody. Go Giants.
There you go. And look for him in Philadelphia. All right, so. R.I.P. Pat, as someone just wrote in the comments. R.I.P. Pat. Pat. I like that. So that is it for us today. We thank Jonny Lazarus from the NHL for coming on and talking some Rangers with us. Again, we thank the Bamboozle Project. You can check them out at www.thebamboozleproject.com. You use the promo code MYPB. Save yourself 25%.
Get that hat.
Get that hat. Send us your questions at any time to mypbshow@gmail.com. On the Instagram platform, I would imagine in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be starting to take some more Ranger questions. So if you have them, be on the lookout for those opportunities. And anything else from you, sir?
No. It's a good show.
Well, enjoy week 3 of the NFL. We wish you well, Pat. We'll miss you, buddy. And take care and have a good week.